Welcome to Resource PNG. Focused primarily on development of the Mount Kara Gold Project, Indochine Mining is drilling several bonanza gold zones within the project to determine their size and grade. Bonanza zones discovered 25 years ago at barracks adjoining world-class Pagera mine were instrumental for funding project development and the long-term profitability of that operation. We talked to Country Manager of Indochine Mining Limited, George Walu, and find out what's the significance of the bonanza zones relative to the viability of the project, what on-site activities are taking place, when the company is likely to apply for a mine development license, and challenges involved in delivering the Mount Kara project.
Welcome viewers, we're joined by George Walu, who is the Country Manager of Indochine Mining Limited. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to the program.
So your interest is the Mount Kara project. It has been on the back burner for about 20 years, following the gold rush in 1988, and then the forceful removal of CRE in 1993. Can you describe what's been happening with the project up to when Indochine Mining Limited took over the project in 2010?
Okay, we won the license by tender, and this was through an entity called Summit. We bought Summit out. And this was, prior to that, local company had actually won the tender for Mount Kara, and we acquired the project through Summit Development. We established ourselves on site in around about June of 2011, and I actually came onto the project to take charge in September of 2011. But before that, Mount Kara has had an interesting past, if you like. I think the world of mining and Papua New Guineans know Mount Kara fondly for the gold rush of 1988. And thereafter, there's been a few companies that have taken over this tenement, including Carpenters, and thereafter Matu, and Madison took over, and also a company out of the US called Buffalo, but they withdrew because they had problems of their own. And then the global financial crisis struck, and Madison went into liquidation. That's the reason why it was put up for tender and taken over by the liquidator.
Okay, so the thing is, Mount Kara is in an interesting position geographically because it's similar to Pagera in terms of its geological makeup. Now, there have been high pockets of gold, and they were called bonanza zones. Are you able to tell us what these bonanza zones are, firstly, and also what it means to the viability of the project?
Okay, a couple of years ago, Pogra joint venture was really in trouble in terms of life of mine resource. And then soon after, they found this, what they call high-grade deposits, and we're terming them bonanza zones. What these are very high-grade gold deposits that have been enriched, and they could have grades running from 100 grams per ton to about 400 grams per ton. It is shocking. These numbers are really shocking in the world of mining, but they fundamentally change the viability of a project, so that in a very small volume, you can have a world-class resource. So what we are looking for in Mount Kara is actually could be just round about the areas that we have been drilling for many years but missing. Okay. And the wonderful thing is that we've begun to formulate and put together a geological model where we can accurately find these things and drill them out and define them for development. So
it's like finding gold coins in the earth?
Something like that.
Okay, so are you able to describe the kind of on-site activity currently going on in the project?
Okay, at the moment, we are currently drilling these bonanza zones. They're quite tricky in three-dimensional space, so we have to find out how they're oriented in space, and then find out the extent along dip or strike, and then define them in the resource model. Okay. The other thing also we've done, we have taken on the challenge of probably tackling the most important issue to do with this project, which is landowner issues. Right. And this issue is primarily to first identify who is the true or customary landowner, and then thereafter define a framework in which they can share equitably in the benefits of mining.
Right. So what I understand is you have this bankable feasibility study that has to be done sometime mid this year. Are you able to outline the roadmap to mine development then, and what stage you are to, do you expect to apply for a mine development license?
Okay, just a little bit of correction. There's terminology issues about bankable feasibility study and a feasibility study. We will produce a bankable feasibility study to bank the project. Right. Okay, this happens about mid next year. End of this year, though, we will produce a feasibility study. Okay, the feasibility study primarily looks at all the technical issues to do with project viability. We submit that to government, and thereafter we seek mine approvals for that. So we then begin to trigger the Mining Development Forum, and in that forum we devise a memorandum of agreement that outlines the obligations of the three stakeholders, which is the company, the landowners, and the government. But before I go on about that issue, first of all, we need to identify who is true Papa ground, right? This is the challenge that we're doing at the moment. And thereafter organize themselves so they can participate in the forum process. So we are doing that at the moment. Then the roadmap continues, hopefully by the latter part of 2013, which is next year, 2014, which is next year. Okay. We then will have a mining lease and then start the construction of the mine, and hope to complete it in about 16 months, and then we'll be ready for production in the last quarter of 2015 or the first quarter of 2016, depending on the achievement of key milestones.
Okay. So do you expect a target of 150,000 ounces of a year from your operation? I
hope not. Our target is to actually define these bonanza zones. And the thing about Mount Kari is that we are not defined properly at depth. Right. Okay, when we look at the geological model in Porgera, compare that to Mount Kari, we are high up in the system, right? So we need to drill deep to find the extensions of this ore body system at depth, and thereafter define a global resource, if you like. But for me as a developer, I would like to see a mine, deliver a mine to Papua New Guinea that produces at least about 200,000 ounces per annum, and roughly a minimum mine life of about 10 years. That'll be a nice project.
Okay. So what are the biggest challenges facing the company?
Time. We are on an accelerated roadmap to mine development, and so time is our largest, is our greatest challenge. So any delays of any kind, what happens in mine development is this: we have a strategic window in which we deliver these projects, particularly difficult projects like Mount Kari that have taken many years to deliver. And I say this because I was involved in the Hidden Valley project a few years ago, right, and we delivered that in 2 years. We got everything done in 2 years after many assessments were done on the project. So we came in and accelerated the way to not only get this project through to development, but we also changed some of the fundamental design concepts that allow these difficult projects to actually become viable. And this is the same approach we're applying in Mount Kari.
We'll have more on the Mount Kari project after the break. Welcome back to the show. We continue the interview with George Numataiwalu, Country Manager of Indochine Mining Limited, regarding the Mount Kari project situated between the Enga and Southern Highlands province. In this part of the interview, we find out how Indochine is using the Melanesian approach to resolve landowner issues. How will landowners benefit from the project?
So you have a so-called Melanesian approach that the company has. You've already discussed this, landowners trying to identify the Papa ground. Now, how do you wish to take that in dealing with landowner issues? This question, we'd like to know how you'd want to handle landowner issues.
Okay, this is an interesting concept. Now, it came from the late Bernard Narakobi. Right. It's not a new idea. All I've done in applying this is to operationalize it. Essentially, what the Melanesian approach, what I'm calling approach, is towards development, is to take your customs and your culture, find out the components that we can use to solve essentially some of the problems brought about by natural resource development. Okay. Some of the challenges could include leadership, for example. When development comes, the whole leadership structure in the traditional sense collapses to some degree. Yeah. Okay. And then you're faced with a lot of these challenges within clans and through and in between clans. Yeah. Now, we try and solve that by resurrecting some of the leadership structures that have existed in your culture for thousands of years. Okay. We're not going to bring in a foreign concept and ram that down people's throats. All we're going to do is we're going to empower them to actually rejuvenate their culture and some of the aspects of leadership that are in this particular context. The other two components of the Melanesian approach is to use customary criteria to identify who is true Papa ground in the customary sense, not in the legal sense. And I say this because landowners have been wrongly identified, I think, in law, right, based on legal criteria rather than customary criteria. I know this for a fact because in Hidden Valley, we solved the identification of landowners by taking the identification process away from the courts and into us place. This is a challenging aspect of identifying landowners, and use their cultural construct, their value systems, their frameworks to identify within themselves who is the true Papa ground in the customary sense. Now, the other thing about the Melanesian approach is that we Melanesians own land over time. It's a temporal discussion. Okay?
Right.
So over time, for example, in the last 15 generations, a clan may have had spiritual connection to that land. They may have worshipped up there. Okay, 10 generations ago, they may have been hunting. 5 generations ago, they may have been doing something else. Okay, but their rights are inalienable in the Melanesian thinking.
Right.
We know this also because we've gone through this process in Fiji, right? So over time, the law cannot seem to juxtapose these varying rights over time that should be recognized in customary law. Okay, all we've done is we've identified that landowners have their rights constructed as layers over this time, and the idea is to then find out who has primacy or who is the principal landowner.
Right.
And thereafter define who is the secondary and the tertiary landowner. The principal landowner, essentially in this context, or in the context of the highlands, is the clan that cuts the pig. Okay. And then they apportion the pig and pass it down their kinship and bloodlines to the secondary and tertiary landowners. This is an important concept because the fact that a lot of the problems to do with land ownership in Papua New Guinea is the fact that the so-called principal landowners that are identified do not share the so-called pig or benefits, and the secondary and tertiary landowners then fight. You've got to remember that this is about land.
Right.
And so people will fight because it is about land. Okay. The other aspect of the Melanesian approach is when we identify a framework in which to distribute benefits properly. Again, using the metaphor of the highlands, we think about this concept of cutting the pig.
Yep.
Okay. This is already embedded in their culture. All we need to do is take that system out and then codify it in a way that we can apply in the modern context. It is not an alien concept. It is something that they understand. It's something they can take ownership of.
Okay. So there seems to be a lot of work going on with land ownership, land identification. So this social mapping then would have to be something that you have to do, and it's required. Where exactly are you in the stream of things when it comes to social mapping, and how many landowners are there up there?
Okay. Just on the social mapping, we've just finalized the interview sessions to do with extracting the information. We use a traditional way of doing this. It's called the malu in this culture, and it is a traditional way of telling a story. So what we do is we then take the 10 criteria that we identified, and then we extract that information and then put that or log that in that system and then weight it. Okay, so these different criteria have different weightings. Right. This is how we then segregate the primary from the secondary from the tertiary landowners. Okay, over this area we have 2 areas which are encompassed in our project. They include the Paella Valley, which is in Enga province, and also the North Tari Basin, which is Hela province. Okay. So Mount Kari is kind of unique in that sense, in that it straddles, I would say, probably 2 of the most challenging highlands provinces in Papua New Guinea. Yeah. And the trick is to get this kind of land ownership identification right. If we didn't do it right from the beginning, I tell you, we would not have the license to operate up there.
Right, okay. So communities up there would benefit one way or another. Currently, what exactly is it doing, or is your company doing for the people up there? And if the mine starts up, what will it mean for the people there?
Okay. At the moment, we're going to be going to a process of empowerment, and first of all, it has to start with education. We need to get them ready for development. I think a lot of people rush too much towards the monetary or material aspects. We've got to remember these are remote people, and a lot of them are illiterate. Right. So we have to start from a system of education and empowerment. And then the benefits of the project are really defined in the mining memorandum of agreement. And I defer to the memorandum of agreement that was successfully constructed for Hidden Valley project. And you have all the components of the benefits in there. You've got localization and training, employment, royalty distribution, spin-off businesses, and all these kinds of things. So, you know, in that context, Papua New Guinean mining policy has been really quite well constructed when I compare it to what we have in Fiji.
Okay. So you just touched on the mining policy. Now, the issue paper on tailing storage and disposal in PNG has recently been made available to the public. What's your response to this paper and its indications for the Mount Kari project?
Okay, thank you for that. It's in a prior life, I used to be the chief regulator for the mining industry in Fiji.
Right.
So I come from an environment in which I view development not only as a developer from the private sector, but also as a sovereign. I have a viewpoint as a regulator. And when we did Hidden Valley, the tailings dam issue is a project breaker issue, just like land ownership issues. So if you don't get the tailings dam issue right, and it could be either to do with tailings dam storage and or discharge, the viability of the project becomes a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
And for Mount Kari, it's the same deal. If we don't get the tailings dam design right, in the pre-feasibility study which we have completed, the viability of the project is then under question. So it's a project breaker issue that must be resolved, not only in terms of the environment, but also in terms of mining policy. Okay. And I say this because there are different kinds of tailings discharge systems at the moment, and we're going through a policy change, policy shift if you like. And Mount Kari again will be at the forefront of some of these discussions, only because we are surrounded by operations that are going to face this challenge of dealing with storage versus discharge. Okay?
Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about with Indoshine's operations in Papua New Guinea?
We're here, I think the same mantra that I spoke to landowners when I first got up there has been the same from day one. We've been consistent about the fact that we're committed to mine development. I, as a Melanesian, would like to deliver this project to Papua New Guinea, probably one of the hardest projects to deliver. Yeah. But I think also we are going to deliver something that's innovative in a lot of things. It's funny to say that we may be rewriting the story of Mount Kari, and it could come from the very worst of the projects to being probably a shining star. That is my hope.
Mr. Neil Matawalu, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Youth with a Mission Medical Ships, that's next. Stay tuned. Youth with a Mission, YWAM, is a worldwide Christian movement operating in more than 1,000 locations in over 180 countries. YWAM is decentralized in structure. Each center is financially and legally autonomous, allowing locations to adapt and serve the specific needs of the community. In this segment, we speak to the patrons of Youth with a Mission Medical Ships, the patron of Australia, Honourable Mark Reynolds, and patron of PNG, Sarabi Namalu. What has happened so far in 2013? How many villages in PNG have been visited over the last 2.5 years? We find out in this interview.
Thank you for your company. We are joined by the patrons of Youth with a Mission Medical Ships, Sarabi Namalu and Honourable Mike Reynolds. Thank you for your company, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Excellent to be here, thank you.
So we've talked to you once before. Now, what has Youth with the Medical Ships, or YWAM Medical Ships, been doing in the past year?
It's been an extraordinarily busy year, and I should say, first of all, it's great to have Sarabi Namalu, your former esteemed Prime Minister, with us for the last year, so I'm sure we'd agree it's been a really busy year. In fact, if you look at 2011 through to 2012, we've had an enormous increase in outputs and helping people in both the Gulf and Western provinces. And of course, last year, for the first time, when we did talk in July last year, we also did some medical services here in Port Moresby when we were showcasing the work we did. So I think, Sarabi, to be fair to say that it's been a very busy year for YWAM.
It certainly has been.
All right, so for 2012, how many villages have you visited? What targets have you reached for that year?
Over 500, just under 6.
Yes, just under 600 villages. All over. Yeah, all over. And that's been over the last 2.5
years. Yeah.
And what we've been able to do is each year expand the number of villages that we're going into. But if you look at the last 2.5 years, really reaching 594 or nearly 600 villages, does show that we're not just in the towns, we're not just in the rural areas around that. We're really heading into the remote areas of both the Gulf and Western provinces. And I think that's where there's a lot of concerns, a lot of problems, because people are not traditionally served by a hospital. or by medical practitioners. And we're working with the National Department of Health in partnership with them and the governors of the provinces and the health administrations to really be able to get to the area where there's most need.
So what has been the reception like in these villages?
It's been pretty good. People have invariably welcomed us, welcomed the ship, welcomed the people on board the ship, people that are out there carrying out these outreach programs, and they've been most hospitable and welcoming.
And I would certainly concur with Sarabi. The planning we do is really bottom-up planning. It's involving, the governors, the health authorities in the provinces. It's involving, the heads of villages, the stakeholders in those areas. And we get a great welcome, really.
Yeah.
And if anything, sometimes other villages that we can't access say, "Can you come to our village next time again?" So we can only be, we can only be very, very pleased with the reaction of people. They do need this assistance we're giving in the medical area, and of course in training and building capacity, upskilling. Capacity building is so important in this area as well.
All right. So where is your team heading next? We've covered a certain amount of land or a certain number of locations last year.
Yes.
What are you looking at for 2013?
Well, 2013, the ship will be coming up in maybe July, and then in September, and usually come out for about 7 months of the year out of Townsville, and then there's to go back to Townsville for a survey and repair and maintenance. But when it does come here, it spends a week here in Port Moresby, and during which it'll do a 1-week outreach program in the city before it heads out again for the Gulf, Gulf and Western provinces. Yeah.
And so I think it's important to say that we go, where the provincial administrators and health administrators would like us to go. So in our planning, that is joint planning, and it's planning with the villages themselves. They know well before that we're coming. And we do service areas that are still strongly in need, and then we expand those outreaches to villages that we haven't been to before. One of the things that we're very much aware of is that the need is so great out there, that we're really looking at how we can expand our services as well. But it's really looking at the need, and there's a strong agreement, if you like, as a recognised PNG health service provider, that we're working, and our work is being underpinned by the National Health Planning Strategy at the national level, but very much at that provincial and local level government, in agreement in regard to where the problems and concerns are most, and where we can actually get to where other people can't access because we have the medical ship.
We continue with youth with the mission medical ships when we return. Continuing on from where we left off, we hear more from the patrons of Youth with a Mission medical ships, YWAM, how much corporate support is behind this non-profit organisation, and what are the costs involved in running such an operation.
So there's a lot of planning involved in this, and obviously there's a certain amount of money that has to be put into this. What would be the ballpark figure of how much is spent within that 7 months that ship spends up here in Papua New Guinea?
Well, our budget for last year was 4.5 million Australian dollars, so you can double that or so, for Kina's, for Kina. So you're looking at about $9 million Kina, that we've invested in these medical services over that 7-month period. It's important to say that a lot of that is voluntary, work that we do. And in fact, Sarabi, we're just acknowledging that about 2 million Australian dollars or 4 million Kinas is basically our specialists, our GPs, our nurses, our health workers, the work that they actually are giving. Now, over and above that, the remaining $2.5 million Australian in our budget has to be raised from the corporate area.
Corporate sector.
Sometimes, funding we wish to get from AusAid. Also, at the local provincial level, we have provincial governors allocating some money in regard to the work that we're doing, perhaps giving us the fuel for that important work we're doing as well. But the corporates, here in PNG, we've increasingly involved the corporates, and that is, I think, some of the resource companies giving back to those areas, the provinces that they're working in.
Yep.
And that's very important as well.
It is. And we're very grateful to steamships, we're grateful to Interoil, to PNG Sustainable, to Curtin Brothers. These are some of the corporate sponsors.
And Octedi. We've got some marvellous support out there, and we hope to get that in a continuing way, and we're confident that we will.
Yep.
So you spent a lot of time meeting a lot of people within this week.
Yes.
How has the response been? How has business corporate representatives responded to
this week we've been meeting mainly with the governors and with ministers, Minister for Health, for instance, and the governors of obviously Western and Gulf provinces, but also in the last few days with the governor of Milne Bay, governor of Oro, and the governor of the Gulf later on today. So all of the governors from this part of our country, and then with the Secretary for Health as well and his officers. So it's been focused primarily in discussions with them because of the increasing pressure on us to expand our services to other parts of Papua New Guinea, primarily along the coast, along the Papuan, the southern coast. So that's why we've been talking to governors from the southern region, primarily in addition to Minister for Health and a number of other ministers.
Because we are being asked to go into other provinces as well. And, we have a track record here over the last 2.5 years, I believe, providing excellent services at that local and provincial level. That's recognised nationally by the Department of Health and by our ministers we've been meeting with. I think we've had a tremendous reception, and we are now, in dialogue, with your national government and with the governors, how we might be able to proceed over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of expanding into those areas. And I think we've had an excellent reception. I think people do want us to expand into those areas. It's very important for us to be able to provide the type of services that we are so successfully providing in the Gulf and Western provinces to other provinces as well. And that includes the 5 provinces in the southern region and of course the National Capital District as well.
More with YWAM after the break. Thanks for staying with us. We now find out how training plays a significant part of YWAM's mission and what their long-term strategic plan is.
So we talked about how business houses respond to you and how the fact that we're getting a lot of support. One thing, and you two are former politicians and very much involved in boards and people's NGOs now. How about training? I believe YWAM does a lot of training of people in Papua New Guinea. How is that going?
So training is a big component of what YWAM does, because ultimately this program has to be sustained into the future. And obviously, at the moment we are very, very fortunate to be getting volunteers from Australia, but also from other parts of the world, from New Zealand, from the United States, and Canada, from Europe, from the Pacific. We had Pacific Islanders as well as Asia, from Japan, from Korea, and so on. But that's the reason why training is a big part of this, because ultimately we've got to get more and more of our people trained to do these things for themselves in their own communities.
I always say that we're not here for the short term or the medium term. We have a 20-year strategic plan, but this must be about sustainability and empowering the people of Papua New Guinea, in those professional and vocational education areas, to take our place, sometime in the future. That's going to be a while in coming, but I'm very impressed, that the national government of Papua New Guinea is looking at implementing both health and education programs across the country. We fit in very, very well to that philosophy of implementing. And we are a registered training provider in Australia. We will become a registered training provider here in PNG. That's the next move we're taking. But we, for example, are meeting with the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at your university in areas of vocational education and training this week as well. We have 3 teams of meetings taking place over the 4 days. But really at the end of the day, quality of life does mean a good health system, a better health system in terms of provision of emergency services and those services that in developed countries take for granted. But it also means education and people having a fulfilling job. And we have so many people that we've been training, and we provide training, for example, to our dentist health workers. We provide our ophthalmologist in the last year from New Zealand has provided some mentoring for one of your ophthalmologists here at the hospital. So we see our extension over the next few years really being involved in that. As we've been doing a lot of it now, but we'd like to increase, the amount of mentoring, training, capacity building and upskilling, and very much in partnership with the national government and also the provincial governments.
Because I think from your figures, it shows about 26.5 thousand people being trained.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Not only that, I think you try to meet up, well, it basically showed how very little dental support we have in the country. Now,
That's right.
YWAM is actually filling in a massive gap here in terms of training people and also getting services out there into the rural areas. What has YWAM Medical Ships got for the coming years? What's your outlook, your plan? Because you've got a 20-year strategic plan. How does it look with PNG in the picture?
Well, we need to increase our capacity. To be able to deliver. We have an old ship, and certainly, we're looking at different proposals where we can increase the capacity, to go to those other provinces. And we're in, discussions with governments both in Australia and in PNG exactly how we can go about that. But at the moment, in terms of dentistry, yes, there's only 32 dentists in the whole of Papua New Guinea. Now, I know in the city of Townsville, where I live, with 200,000 population, not 7 million, we have more than 32 dentists. So it does mean, for example, offering some good training positions, professional training positions, some internships on the ship itself. It does mean working with your dental school at the University of PNG, working together. And I think in working together, we can really be of great use to each other. Quite often, not only in PNG, but in Australia and other countries of the world, sometimes there's a lack of placements. And if we can provide those placements on the ship, and I think the other component that we've also, Sarabi and I and the team have been talking about, is that when you live in an urban area, you quite often do not have a real appreciation, whether you're a Papua New Guinean or whether you're an international volunteer, you don't have a real appreciation of the needs in those remote areas of PNG. And I think it'd be fair to say that people are very startled. Yeah. And we've had, indeed, people from Port Moresby who've come out on the ship with us for 3 weeks and say, well, look, we never really knew what the need was out there. And so it's a matter of, I think, recognising and understanding that need, which the government, in terms of what they're trying to implement, I think it's a real need to implement. But along with that implementation, it has to be training and capacity building. Whether we're talking about education at a university, whether we're talking about vocational education and training, and of course in all the work that we're doing, both on the ship and in the land-based work we're doing in the villages, we're involving more and more PNG people in the work that we're doing.
Right. Yeah. So, Sarabi, as a former politician and former Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, just looking at YWAM Medical Ships and the work that they're doing, how do you see it fitting in with, say, the current government's plans?
Well, I think it fits in very well. With obviously this year has been declared by the Prime Minister as the year of implementation. And the governors we've spoken to so far have outlined their own vision, their own plans for their own provinces, and welcome very much what YWAM is doing. And I think that it's the things that we're doing can fit in well with their own plans for their own provinces. So and we are delighted to be able to work together with them, as we are already in the Gulf and the Western provinces, with their officials, the provincial health authorities in those two provinces, and here in National Capital District for a short period of time whilst the ship is in Port Moresby.
Thank you very much for your time and coming and talking to us about YWAM medical ships, Sir Ravi Namalu and Honourable Mike Reynolds.
It's been our
Thank
great
you very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
We join Norton Rose after the break. Welcome back. So far on the show, we've featured Indochine Mining and their major development focus on the Mount Carey project and Youth with a Mission Medical Ships, a voluntary organisation providing medical assistance to the rural areas of PNG. In this segment, we speak to Anthony Latimer, a corporate partner of Norton Rose, a leading international legal practice. In this interview, Anthony speaks about investing into PNG's resource sector.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this edition of Resource PNG. Tonight on our show, we have Anthony Latimer, who is the corporate partner for Norton Rose. Tonight on our show, he will be speaking to us about investing into PNG's resource sector. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you.
Now, Norton Rose is an international law firm. Can you tell us a bit about Norton Rose and your background in PNG?
Thank you. In Norton Rose, it is an international law firm. We have offices in about 40 countries. We are specialists in certain sectors of the law, in particular mining. Unfortunately, as at today, we don't have an office in Port Moresby, but it is one of our key initiatives to open an office in Port Moresby. But I have been lucky enough to work in PNG for many years. My family background, my father was a coffee grower in the highlands of Papua New Guinea for 30 years, so I'm one of the lucky ones who have spent their childhood in PNG, and I still speak Pidgin English today, so that's my background and the background of my firm.
Right. Now, foreign investors investing into PNG, there are obvious advantages and disadvantages. Can you enumerate some of them?
The advantages of investing into PNG, it is an extremely wealthy country from a resource perspective. So we have many of our international clients looking at Papua New Guinea, in particular in the gold sector, copper, nickel, and on the energy side, in particular in gas. So PNG is one of those very, very lucky countries which is very wealthy in natural resources, and that is the key benefit to invest into PNG. But as I talk to our clients around the world about investing into PNG, you do need to be very careful when you invest into PNG, not only from a perspective of having the right advisors, and when you go into PNG, that you are dealing with the right people, can give you the right advice, and to maximise your investment. And that is not just a legal question, it's more than just legal, it's legal, financial, political, it's just dealing with the right people when you go into PNG.
What are the key legal issues that resource companies need to prepare for when entering into Papua New Guinea?
Very big question. I am not a PNG lawyer, so I am speaking from a foreign investment perspective, a foreign lawyer looking after companies going into PNG. But essentially, as with any mining project, it's looking at the mining assets that you're trying to buy, and if they're exploration assets, then it's looking at the title that you have in terms of the licenses that you have for exploration. If it's an operating mine, then you're looking at much more complex legal issues. But again, I think the key, from my perspective, as guiding foreign companies coming into PNG, is to choose a good partner, which we, in terms of who we would work with as Norton Rose, we would work with a local law firm to work on those key issues. But whether it's PNG or it's another country, the issues are the same. It's really looking at the the title and the operational issues around those assets. And it's, they are big issues, and they're the key issues that you look at.
All right, speaking on issues, the landowner issues, a lot of companies have landowner issues. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Well, I think PNG, as with some other countries, have had a lot of landowner issues. Certain mining projects in PNG have internationally have become well known for having landowner issues. I think it's just one of those things of doing business with in mining operations where you have to deal with the local people whose land is being affected by mining operations. And again, it's really guiding the companies coming into PNG that they must be very respectful and careful in terms of dealing with landowners. There's no simple solution. It's a matter of working with the landowners to get them engaged in the projects, to, in a sense, to make sure that they understand and feel like they're getting value out of the projects that are affecting their land. So it's a very difficult issue, but something that with good cooperation with landowners you can do so. Again, it's a matter of making sure that the mining company coming in is given proper advice around dealing with those issues.
Anthony, is there anything else that you'd like to say to our viewers?
Yes, I as a person who has grown up in PNG and has a close affinity with the country, as a promoter of the country, I would just like to say that the country is a land of opportunity, and for foreign investors coming into the country, it is not only in terms of being able to work with the local people and the government in terms of developing these opportunities in mining investments, but it's also to enjoy the country itself. It's a very beautiful country, and the more people I speak to who visit that country truly believe that this country has a great future, and I think that is a key message for people around the world. But certainly in terms of the Norton Rose situation where in our global business, I've never seen so much focus on PNG with its wealth and with its beauty. So I do feel very good about the future of PNG.
Anthony, thank you for being on our show.
Thank you.
That ends another edition of Resource PNG. For any comments or queries, do email us on this address, resourcepng@mtv.com.pg. But to find out more, check MTV online, that's www.mtv.com.pg, and go to our Resource PNG page. Until another edition of Resource PNG, have a pleasant evening.